Hi everyone, I'm Jen O'Brien with Hawks Learning, and today I'm going to talk to you about reporting and analytic options within our software. So if you have any questions as we go through today, please make sure you'll see at the bottom of your screen there's a Q&A box and there's also a chat box. If you type any questions that you have into either of those, at the end of the webinar, I will make sure to take the time to read through all of them, address any questions you have, and cover anything else that you're requesting. But to get started, we know in any classroom environment, it's always important to have a really helpful set of reporting tools, but even more so now where a lot of you are finding yourselves teaching in an online or distance learning environment. It's that much more important to have a lot of tools that will help you identify how your students are progressing through the course content, at-risk students who might be falling behind. That way you can intervene and try to get them back on track in any way you can. So I'll start by showing you the page that's going to contain and house all of these reporting tools. It is under the reporting tab in your instructor account. You'll see we have a lot of options on this page, but most of what most of what instructors access we find will be under the key reports section. So here we have all student scores, detailed student grades, search by criteria, and assignment reviewer. So I will start by jumping into all student scores. This is what you can consider more of your comprehensive grade book, where it houses all of your students and all of their grades. So you can select one section at a time. Some schools will select all sections. You then only need to click this display student scores option. You will see a list of every student in your class in the left-hand column, their overall grade, letter grade, which by the way, we set by default to the standard 90 to 100 is an A, and so forth. But you as an instructor can adjust those if you want to and have your own grading chart. You will also see any grading categories that you have. So for those of you familiar with how to set up an instructor account in Hawks, you come up with a grading structure under grade settings, and the categories we give you by default is homework, tests, and quizzes, or lessons, tests, and quizzes. You can change these. These can be in modules if you prefer, or any category you really want. But either way, each one's going to house the grades. So here I've got homework, tests, and quizzes. I can expand my homework in order to see performance, not for all of the homework, but each individual assignment. So you have both options there. Our homework lessons, because they're mastery-based to completion, we display results by icon. So the icons will show up as yellow for any assignment that's been turned in, but past the due date, it's late. Green means it's been turned in on time. An orange icon means that it is past the due date and has not yet been submitted. And then this blue icon is a future due date that is not yet passed. We do have the option, if you look here under Show View Settings, you have some ways you can tweak how this is displayed. For instance, if I want to not have a graphical view for the lessons, if instead I want to see submission date, I can select this, and that will also show the grades per lesson. I also have the option to display grades by points or percentages. And if I select percentages, I can even select weighted grade or overall grade. So you'll see weighted grade shows the homework grade out of the 25%. And the overall grade is going to show the student's total grade on homework. So if a student's reached 100% of the 25% of their grade. Now, I want to also show you the expansion of the testing option. You'll see here, students are going to see you will see the exact grades for your students that they achieved on each assessment. Now, any of these assignments is clickable, and if you click either on a lesson or on the homework, or I'm sorry, test grade, you will see the option to edit the score for the student, review the assignment, which opens up our assignment reviewer tool. I'll show you this tool under a different report since you have access to it in multiple different locations. And then update student settings or edit a due date for the homework assignment. If you are, let's say, administering a test offline and manually grading it. I know that's less likely right now in an online environment, but you can always also click on an assignment name at the top of the page, which will open up the edit scores page for that assignment. That way you can type in all the grades at once, and it's very easy to manage that way. The last thing I wanted to point out on this page is that you can click on any student name to open up that student's detailed student grade. As you might recall, under reports, detailed student grades is one of our 4 key reports we highlight at the top of the page. And so this is nice if you do see a student who maybe is struggling or who's coming into your office hours and you want to connect with them based on only looking at their grades. You can just click on their name and it opens up that student's detailed student's grade. Pointing out a few things on the right-hand side here, you'll see there's the option to send the student an email directly. So it's very easy to communicate with students if you're identifying anyone who is struggling. You can link to their time on task lesson activity information. On the right-hand side here, I can see the most recent login for each student. So when did the student last log into the software? It's an important thing to keep an eye on, especially in this online environment. And then of course I see the student's overall grade, and all of the information I saw under all student scores is listed here as well. I see the assignment completion status, what they've turned in on time or late. I also see any test completion grades as well. And then in terms of the actions we saw before, editing scores, due dates, and reviewing assignments, that's displayed here as well. I can also access some of those from clicking on the hyperlinked assignments. So if I click on an assignment, it takes me again to that same Certify Reviewer I mentioned under all student scores. If I click on a grade, it takes me to a page where I can edit that grade for the student. So a lot of these reports you'll find are not just a way to take a look at static information, it's also a way to come in, interact with the student, and manage grades and settings, things like that. Going back to the reports page, so we've already covered all student scores and detailed student scores. I will jump next into search by criteria. This is a nice report to allow you to identify a group of students based on their grade information as well as their activity within the software. And it takes it a step further, and it doesn't only allow you to identify that group of students, it also gives you a very easy way to communicate to them en masse. So I'll make sure to highlight that as we go through this. But think of this report as a way to identify, say, at-risk students, students who haven't been logging in, who are aren't performing at high levels on the homework or tests or in their overall grade. It's also a good way to maybe pull a list of students who are succeeding in the class, who are logging in and doing their work, and send them an encouraging message to keep them on track as well. So your options when it comes to grade filters, you can pull a list of students maybe with an overall grade that's below an A or a B, so 0 to 79% perhaps. Alternatively, if you want to, you can maybe pull a list of students who just have a 0 to 79% only on homework or only on quizzes. Another option on the right-hand side is pulling in a list of students based on whether or not they've logged into the software in recent days. So maybe students who aren't doing well or below a B in the class and also haven't logged into the software for 4 days. If I click Filter Report, it pulls a list of any students those settings apply to. I'll deselect grades to show you if it's a larger list of students. So in an online environment, this might be something you do once or twice a week on Monday, maybe Monday and Wednesday. Pull a list of students who haven't logged in for the past 2 or 3 days, select all of those names, click Send Message, and right from there, it adds all of these students to a blind copy email that you can then type a message. Hey, I noticed you haven't been logging in. Keep in mind, now that we're not meeting in a lecture environment, it's all the more important for you to get into the software and really work through the instructional content, the practice mode, and those certified homework assignments. In addition to the filter options I've mentioned already, you'll see that you can also pull students based on time spent in the homework lessons, Learn, Practice, Certify, and or web tests. And also students who have attempted to certify a certain number of times between a date range. So if a student is certifying 0 times between, over the past 4 or 5 days, you probably want to be able to reach out to those students and try to help get them back on track. One other nice feature about this report is if you come up with a combination of filters that you think is a really good way to identify at-risk students or identify students who are doing well who you want to encourage, you can always save that filter option. So it'll save whatever you've selected up here under grades and activities. And then it will allow you, every time you log in, rather than having to select everything again, you simply select that filter from this drop-down box to run your report. Next report I wanted to show you is Assignment Reviewer. So this is going to be in my mind, one of your more comprehensive reports, a really good place for you to log in and big picture see how your overall class is doing. And from the same place, it allows you to drill in and then identify how individual students are performing as well. So logging into Assignment Reviewer, you'll see I have 2 main tabs that it will open to. There's lessons, so it's going to be your Hawks Learn, Practice, Certify lessons. And to the right of that, there's web tests. So if you are assigning any online assessments through Hawks, those will show up here under web test. I'm going to show you everything under the lessons tab since pretty much the features remain the same between the two. If I scroll down, I can see I've got this bar chart where it lists every lesson I've assigned to my class. Same thing as before, where I can easily see how many students have turned in something on time, turned in something late, or number of students who are overdue on an assignment. The due date has passed and they've not yet submitted it. I see down below the average class time spent per mode as well. So on average in lesson 1.1, how much time were my students spending in Learn, Practice, and Certify? But more importantly, from this page, I can at a glance see which lessons students are struggling with right off the bat. So if I see students have struggled to complete lesson 1.1, I can click into that lesson and it will pull up. So I was playing around with this report before. By default, it pulls up students. It saves where you last clicked. So it will pull up your students. You'll see a list of your students in the class. You'll see if they have mastered or not in that assignment. You can also see how many attempts they've made to complete the assignment. And what I think is more beneficial than the lesson time statistics, you will see on an individual student basis how much time they're spending in Learn, Practice, and Certify. So a few tips or recommendations to filter this information from this report. One good starting place would be click this score column twice, and it will sort any students who have not mastered the assignment to the top of the list. This might also be something you do with number of attempts, because maybe you pull the highest number of attempts to the top. Maybe a student's still mastering it, but if it's taking some of your students 4, 5, 6 attempts, you still probably want to take a look at what's going on there and see if there's some advice you can give them to make it a little easier for them to reach mastery closer to 1 to 2 attempts. Now, these types of sorting tools are really helpful in this report because they allow you to more efficiently sort through this large amount of data. So we know we're providing you a lot of information here on your class, which we think is important, but we also think it's important to give you the tools to be able to filter that information down and focus on who's struggling in your class and what they might be struggling with. I will go ahead and click on the student here who has not yet mastered it. I see that they haven't spent much time in Learn and Practice. So it's one piece of advice I can give to the student. When I click on the name, I will see every attempt the students made. So whether or not they've mastered it, if that student's tried to certify more than one time, or even just one time, you'll see all of those attempts listed. Let me click on the most recent attempt to review that student's individual performance on a per question basis. So this is that Certify or Assignment Reviewer tool that I was talking about under all student scores and detailed student grades. So this same review feature for an per assignment basis is accessible through all student scores, detailed student scores, and of course here within Assignment Reviewer. I can click through and see every question, whether they've gotten it right or wrong. But what I think is, again, a more efficient way to navigate through this report is to hide correct and just review the incorrect questions. What's nice about this is I can also see the explain error feedback the student received when they were working through the assignment. So I see the type of help they were already receiving from Hawks. In fact, if I look at questions a student got correct, I also see the tutoring option that they received if they click tutor for step-by-step and solution feedback. As an instructor, you'll also see in the top right-hand corner the time spent per question. So this could be something particularly for, say, a web test. It could be good to review, especially if you're not feeling confident that a student was testing in a secure environment at home. Taking a look at how much time they're spending per question can give you some additional insight. How realistic is it for a student to have solved this question within this period of time? Last thing to show you within the assignment reviewer is the analytics tab. So when you're within a lesson, so we're in lesson 1.1, you can always click over to analytics. And this will give you, rather than a per student view, it's showing you performance by question. So overall class performance by question. And really I like to think of this as your commonly missed questions report. This is a report you can pull up if you're doing, for instance, a virtual online lecture with your students still. You can pull this up and share your screen. There's no individual student names on this page, so it's no privacy or FERPA violation to pull it up. And then as a group, you could work through, or you just working in front of the students in a virtual meeting, you could pull up the most commonly missed questions, either from visually looking at the most commonly missed on this report, or I could sort to pull the most commonly missed using the sort at the bottom with these columns. And then if you click on the question, whether it's from here or on this page, it will pull up a version of what that question looked like. So one thing to keep in mind with Hawks is by default for Certify and Web Test, every student has a different version of the question. So we try to generate different values or different versions depending on if it's math or a different discipline. But it will be the same question type that each student receives, also just in a different order. In Web Test, you can lock the values. You can also lock the order. So I would see this question. I know my students are struggling with it. Maybe I then pull up a whiteboard and start working through it with my class. And you can click through each of those questions to work through them. That is everything within Assignment Reviewer. I mentioned it on the front end, but just as one quick reminder, everything we saw under lessons, we can also see under web test. Time per web test, time per question on web test, overall class performance, as well as individual student performance on each one of those online tests. Now, one report I wanted to highlight outside of the key reports that are found at the top of the page, and that's if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that there's a weekly assignment completion option. This is nice because it actually allows you to pull by date range. So in the context of a live classroom, you probably are wanting to pull this on a weekly basis, but you can actually pull with any time parameter. I'm gonna pull, put it to 2018. So this is a demonstration gradebook without live real students. So I'm gonna pull a bigger date range to show you some more relevant data. You click display report and it shows you a list of students and what they've completed during this date range. I can also sort by student name so that it groups all of their work together. So now at a glance, I can pretty easily see my student Renee has completed these 3 web tests and 2 Certify lessons during this, let's pretend it's 1 week date range. And scrolling down, I can see Jen Moore has completed Certify assignments. If there's a student who's only done web tests or only done Certify assignments, that could be a good indication that I want to reach out to that student and remind them to work on their other assignment types. I can click on the student name to link back out to detailed student grades and send them a message there. Now, you might have seen when I ran this report, I selected this option to show students who haven't finished any assignments during the selected time period. Clicking that and clicking display report will allow you to pull any students to the top of this report who have completed no assignments, no web tests or Certify assignments during the date range that you entered, which I'll have to narrow my date range in order to pull that up. So see here, if I click date complete, so now I can very easily reach out to these 5 students by clicking into each one and sending them a message and asking them what's going on, if there's anything I can do to help get them back on track. That's everything I wanted to cover today. We'll take a quick look and make sure there's no questions or answers. I think we're good to go, and please feel free to reach out if there is anything else we can help you with here at Hawks. Thanks so much.